Hello, Symposiast. I'm Dr. Angela Puca, Religious Studies PhD, and your online resource for the academic study of magic, esotericism, paganism, shamanism, and all things occult. Today, we talk about Neo-Sufism and the evolution of Sufism from a global perspective. Before we dive in, a quick thank you for your support. It's your contributions through Patreon, Coffee, or YouTube memberships that enables me to offer free peer-reviewed sourced education on esoteric topics. For details on how to support my project, check out drangelapuca.com and the links below. Also, subscribe to my newsletter to stay updated on my latest content, bypassing unpredictable social media algorithms. Thanks to everyone who supports academic esoteric literacy. Your involvement is invaluable. Now, let's get started with today's discussion. Sufism, a mystical branch of Islam, actively pursues divine love and transcendent knowledge through direct personal experiences, offering a stark contrast to the orthodox Islamic emphasis on emulating the Prophet Muhammad. Originating in the 9th century, Sufism has profoundly influenced various cultural manifestations, such as the evocative Persian qawwali music, the hypnotic dances of Turkish whirling dervishes, and the deeply symbolic Sufi poetry rendered in Persian, which has significantly impacted the visual arts. Introduced to Western audiences in the early 20th century, primarily through Hazrat Inayat Khan and subsequently expanded by Meher Baba, Sufism adapted to the liberal cultural milieu of the West, progressively distancing itself from conventional Islamic frameworks. Central to Sufism is the doctrine of fana, self-annihilation in the divine, and baqa, eternal existence in God, principles that have nurtured the development of diverse Sufi orders. These range from traditional orders, which adhere closely to Islamic practices, to Neo-Sufism, which places a greater emphasis on the essence of Sufi mysticism, often independently of its Islamic origins. Our exploration into Sufism's integration and evolution in different cultural contexts underscores its role as a dynamic and adaptive spiritual tradition. In this episode, I will present research arguing that global Sufism, having migrated far from its Islamic roots, could be considered a new religion. This transformation has been facilitated by Western fascinations with Eastern mysticism and the commercialization of cultural products such as music influenced by Sufi principles. We will also explore how Sufism, as a cultural filter, has contributed to the arts, exemplified by Iranian artists promoting Sufi values through non-Islamic classical Persian poetry and music. This adaptability of Sufism highlights its role in accommodating personal expression within the contemporary Western cultural landscape. Sufi history can be divided into three key phases: the era of asceticism, the period of classical mysticism, and the time of the fraternities. Initially, Sufism emerged from a century of Muslim asceticisms in Basra, Iraq, marked by the early Muslim ascetics' response to the increasing worldliness of the Umayyad period. These ascetics, noted for their piety and devotion, laid the groundwork for what would become Sufism. The transformation from asceticism to mysticism was significantly influenced by Rabia al-Adawiyah, a female mystic from Basra, who emphasized a pure, disinterested love for God. Rabia introduced the concept of divine love to Sufism, which was a real game changer. Before her, the most exciting thing in Sufism might have been double-sided prayer mats. So really, this shift introduced the concept of divine love into Sufism, further developed by figures like Junaid Baghdadi and Dhul Nun Mezri, who introduced terms like makhrifa, inward knowledge. Bayazid Bistami further advanced the concept with the doctrine of fana, annihilation of self, linking it to earlier theosophical ideas from Greco-Roman and Islamic philosophy. The second phase saw figures like Al-Halai, who pushed the boundaries of personal mystical experience, often at great personal risk. Al-Halai was so mystical, he probably didn't just think outside the box, he was floating above it. His ideas of divine love and union with God challenged orthodox views and set the stage for later mystics and poets. Al-Ghazali in the 11th century moderated Sufism's mystical and philosophical aspects, which helped spread Sufism widely and led to the formation of various Sufi orders. Sufism, in fact, had a profound influence across the Islamic world, from Turkey to India, integrating local mystical traditions and significantly shaping Islamic society. Sufi fraternities played a crucial role in spreading Islam and Persian culture across a vast region, establishing a network of kanikhas and influencing the religious and cultural life of ordinary people. The Seljuk Empire in the 11th century played a crucial role in the spread of Islam through the missionary activities of wandering Sufis, known as dervishes, and their establishment of kanikhas, or Sufi lodging houses. These facilities were vital for extending Islamic influence, especially in remote rural areas and new territories like Tabarestan and Anatolia. The practice of Sama, spiritual concerts, which emerged in the 9th century among Baghdad Sufis, became a significant ritual involving music, as well as dance, that induced trance-like states. Despite initial opposition from Orthodox Islam, Sama gained acceptance and became standardized in Sufi rituals by the 13th century. Sufis were known for their disdain towards the orthodoxy of the ulema, as illustrated by the Andalusian Sufi Ibn al-Arabi, and later by the Persian poet Hafiz, who emphasized spiritual purification through non-traditional means, like visiting taverns. However, the rise of the Safavid Empire in the 16th century saw a decline in Sufi influence, as this new regime supported a strict form of Shia Islam and suppressed Sufi practices. Sufism's resistance is partly due to its ability to integrate aspects of pre-Islamic cultures, which it encountered through missionary work. These included adopting shamanistic elements from Central Asia and other local religious practices, allowing Sufism to maintain cultural diversity within the Islamic world. Persian civilization, in particular, managed to revive its language and cultural practices after centuries of Islamic dominance, with Sufi poetry featuring metaphors of love and wine to express spiritual concepts. Prominent Persian poets like Rudaki and later figures such as Rumi and Hafiz used the lyrical language of Sufism to discuss transcendent love and spirituality, often challenging traditional religious and cultural norms. The Kalandariya movement, which emerged in the 13th century, epitomized this spirit through its embrace of Antinomian values. In the arts, Persian miniature painting and the music of the whirling dervishes became significant cultural expressions of Sufism. These art forms, especially miniature painting, often depicted mystical and poetic themes, such as the Prophet Muhammad's ascension and scenes from Sufi saints' life. Qawwali music, which developed in 12th century Persia and later became popular in South Asia, is another profound Sufi contribution, with performers like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan bringing it to the global audience. Sufism's universal appeal and adaptability are well acknowledged, with its institutions demonstrating a capacity to transcend socio-economic barriers through globalization. This adaptability has allowed Sufism to evolve beyond traditional Islamic confines, adopting forms that are responsive to contemporary social settings, leading to what some refer to a new age or new Sufism. This adaptability has allowed Sufism to evolve beyond traditional Islamic confines, adopting forms that are responsive to contemporary social settings, leading to what some refer to as New Age or Neo-Sufism. This form of Sufism, while maintaining core Sufi teachings, often diverges significantly from orthodox Islamic practices, highlighting a tradition of innovation within Sufism. The phenomenon of Neo-Sufism is especially evident in Western contexts, where it has been shaped by and integrated into the landscape of Western esotericism. Neo-Sufism in the West is categorized into Islamic Sufism, non-Islamic Neo-Sufism, and partly Islamic Neo-Sufism. These Western manifestations of Sufism often presented as a universal truth that transcends traditional religious boundaries, suggesting that Sufism embodies the essence of all religions. So, in the West, Sufism has been mixed with everything from yoga to veganism, making it the equivalent of a hipster cafe. Hazrat Inayat Khan is a pivotal figure in the transmission of Sufism to the West, founding the Western Sufi order and promoting a version of Sufism that emphasized the religion of the heart, independent of any specific religious doctrine. His teachings were inclusive, drawing on elements from various world religions and focusing on spiritual unity. Another significant movement, Sufism Reoriented, emerged from Inayat Khan's teachings under the guidance of Meher Baba, who integrated concepts from Vedanta and Christianity into his Sufi teachings. This school of thought viewed Sufism as predating Islam, emphasizing a spiritual journey beyond the physical. Idries Shah, another influential figure, portrayed Sufism as a living tradition, adaptable to the context of the times. His approach, which leaned heavily on psychological insights, stripped traditional Sufi practices of their religious elements to make them more accessible to a Western audience. Shah's representation of Sufism focused on its philosophical and wisdom aspects, utilizing storytelling to convey Sufi teachings. Overall, Neo-Sufism in the West has adapted to meet the spiritual needs of Westerners, often distancing itself from its Islamic roots to emphasize a more universal spiritual experience. This evolution reflects both the historical adaptability of Sufism and its contemporary relevance in a global context. Hirsch's framework elucidates that Sufism can be conceptualized as a producer of spiritual commodities, which are processed and refined by organizational bodies before reaching the ultimate consumer. This model accentuates the adaptability of Sufism across diverse societal contexts, reflecting and responding to local cultural dynamics. In its historical role, Sufism has acted as a counterbalance to materialism in the early Islamic periods, promoted the cultivation of mystical love, aided the expansion of Islam, and has been embraced as a perennial non-Islamic philosophy. In Western societies, Sufism has been particularly revered as a form of theosophy or wisdom tradition, appealing to the romanticized notion of the Orient and dovetailing with the Western esoteric discourse on universal truths. This interpretation of Sufism contrasts sharply with its traditional Islamic theological roots, demonstrating a significant transformation in its understanding and practice. Furthermore, within the milieu of Western esotericism, Sufism has adopted and integrated a range of philosophical and spiritual practices that resonate with broader esoteric traditions. This includes an emphasis on direct personal experience of the divine, an idea that aligns well with the esoteric principle of gaining knowledge through internal mystical insights rather than external authority or dogma. The practices of meditation, chanting, and the Sufi path of inward journey toward self-discovery and divine union are paralleled in various Western mystical traditions, such as those found in Gnosticism and Kabbalah, which similarly value the personal quest for spiritual enlightenment. Additionally, the adoption of Sufi practices in the West often involves a syncretic approach where elements of Sufism are blended with other spiritual and philosophical traditions. This includes the incorporation of universalistic and inclusivist approaches to religion, which are hallmark features of New Age spirituality. Such adaptations make Sufism particularly appealing to a Western audience that is increasingly looking beyond traditional religious structures towards a more eclectic and personalized spiritual experience. Thus, in Western esotericism, Sufism is not just a transplant of an Eastern spiritual tradition, but a reinterpreted and reinvented form of spirituality that actively engages with and contributes to the contemporary Western spiritual landscape. This has allowed Sufism to thrive as a vibrant and dynamic element of global spirituality, continually evolving in its new settings. The adaptation of Sufism to modern consumerist societies raises questions about the authenticity and integrity of its expressions. For example, in Turkey, Sufi practices have been reduced to tourist performances, similar to the street performances of sacred Aboriginal music in Australia. Such adaptations prompt discussions on whether these practices retain their theological meanings or merely serve as exotic aesthetic attractions. Despite these transformations, the spiritual essence of Sufism and its cultural products are argued to remain potent, even if mystified or misunderstood by those less familiar with its deeper meanings. Like sacred Aboriginal music or art, the performative spirituality of Sufi music and dance carries a dynamic energy that impacts individuals profoundly, allowing them to engage with Sufism and spirituality at their own pace and deepen their understanding over time. This is it for today's video. If you watched until this point, leave me a dancing emoji. Now, my dear symposiast, this project of delivering free academic knowledge based on peer-reviewed scholarship can only exist thanks to your support. So if you have the means and want to support this project, I would highly encourage you to consider supporting my work with a one-off PayPal donation by joining memberships, my inner symposium on Patreon or Ko-fi, buying my merch, and checking out my services at drangelapucca.com. You find all the links in bio, in the cards, in the info box, in the pinned comment. You find them everywhere. So thank you all for considering. And you also have the super thank option, now that I think about it. But lots of options to support my work. Also, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter so that you will have more insights from me, regardless of social media censoring. And if you like this video, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, activate the notification bell so that you will never miss a new upload from me. And leave me a comment because I really want to know what you thought about this video. What is your experience with Sufism? What are your thoughts about it and about its adaptations in the West? Let me know. So thank you all so much for being here and stay tuned for all the academic fun. Bye for now. Today we hold the ground, we'll